generally analyze systems using a unity feedback. But if unity feedback is not there, you can always convert it into a unity feedback system. Otherwise, if HS is also given to you and other than one, then what you can do is that you can just apply this formula and you will get the closed loop transfer function. So you get the closed loop transfer function by this formula as g over 1 plus g. In this case, if there was some h, it would have been g over 1 plus gh. So once you do that, you will be able to formulate a characteristic equation which is 1 plus g in this case, but in general, it is 1 plus gh equals 0. So poles of the closed loop transfer function are given by the roots of the characteristic equation. That is very clear because you can see that for the closed loop transfer function, g is the numerator and 1 plus gh is the denominator. So denominator equating to 0 will give you poles, and denominator is also the characteristic equation. So roots of the characteristic equation are going to give you the poles of the system. Then what we did was we solved it. We got some values of the roots lying at different positions. There were two variables a and k. Now a fundamentally will determine the location of the poles, right? So we are not varying a as such right now. What we are doing is that we are because we already know what will happen when we vary a. The root will either go to the right hand side, it will remain on the left hand side, or it will be on the imaginary axis. So we already know what will happen. Right hand side unstable, left hand side stable, and on the imaginary axis, if it's a simple pole, then it's marginally stable or marginally unstable. So it's almost there, critically stable, one can say. So we already know what will happen if you vary a. But the interesting thing is what will happen if you vary k. So that is what we are doing. We are varying k from 0 to infinity because this is basically what we call as the system's gain. So we'll see what happens, and I was able to tell you that if you put k equal to 0, you got certain roots which were real and distinct. If the k value was lying between 0 to a square by 4, you still got distinct roots, but now they were not on. We got distinct roots in this case also. But they are not stationary as minus a and 0. They will move depending upon the value of k. At k equal to a square by 4, you got real and repeated roots at minus a by 2. And if you increased k to by greater than a square by 4, then the roots became complex, and you could write them as a plus jp. So these were the four possible scenarios for the value for k in this example. And then using that, I plotted this graph of S plane. So k equal to 0, this meant minus a, location of the root of the characteristic equation. K equal to 0, this point meant the root of the characteristic equation, which is 0. And as you increased k from 0 to a square by 4, this root location started to move from minus a, it started to move towards minus a by 2, and from 0 it started to move towards minus a by 2. So you see those black arrows pointing towards minus a by 2. At this point where I have given a fluorescent highlight, this is minus a by 2 point, and this is achieved when k is a square by 4. Then you see that if I increase the value of k beyond a square by 4, either the root goes up along this line towards infinity, or it goes along this line towards infinity. The reason why it will go to infinity is, even though the real part remains the same along this entire line, it's the imaginary part b that becomes greater in magnitude. And if you take the under root and evaluate the length of this vector, you will see that it will constantly increase. That's why we are saying that as k increases, this root will tend towards infinity. So you see that you are basically getting a movement like this, and then you go up like this, or you can go down like this, or you're coming from this side, you go this way, and then you again end up at this point where you go up or you go down. So that is basically how it is moving. But the entire time you are on the left hand side of the S-plane. You can see this is j omega axis. So whatever is on the left is left hand side of the S-plane. So in this case, regardless of the value of k, I can say that the system is going to remain stable. However, you can always argue on what values of k the system will be more stable, because the more deeper you are inside the S-plane, the faster the transients are going to die and the faster steady state will be reached, and that is what you really want. So that is how you look at it. So this graph that I plotted, this graph, you could say, this small graph, which is basically this, is actually the root locus of this kind of a system. So we will be drawing such kind of root locuses based on some rules, and we will be talking about the stability and the relative stability of the control system. Then the question was method to generate root locus for higher order systems. Now, this method is applicable, the one that we were doing, for any order system. But when you have a system with a degree 3 or a degree greater than 3, then it becomes difficult to find out roots analytically and then solve them and see where they lie. So there is a methodology is given, a rule by rule. If you follow, you will be able to generate the root locus very easily. So the points are as follows. One is, root locus is symmetrical about the real axis, which is the sigma axis. You can see this graph. If you look at it, then this is the sigma axis. And you can see that it is symmetrical about the sigma axis. It's like the mirror image. So that is the first rule. It will always be symmetrical about the sigma axis, number one. Now, I said, as k increases from 0 to infinity, that is the range in which we are increasing k, each branch of the root locus originates from an open loop pole with k equal to 0 and terminates either at an open loop 0 or at infinity with k equal to infinity. So here I wanted to, as I explained you, that whenever you will take the value of k equal to 0, the roots of the characteristic equation will be same as the open loop transfer functions poles. And you can see over here, if you look at the open loop transfer function, then its poles are located at 0 and minus a. So even for when you are doing the analysis using closed loop transfer functions, k is equal to 0 physically signifies the location of the poles of the open loop transfer function. So that is why here you have minus a and here you have 0, right? So as k increases from 0 to infinity, there will be branches in root locus. These are branches. This is branch 1. You could say this is branch 2, this is branch 3, this is branch 4. So these are basically branches. Each branch of root locus originates from an open loop pole with k equal to 0. You can see that the branch starts from this point and it starts from this point and it moves to minus a by 2. So branch will always start from k equal to 0. And it will always start from open loop poles. That is what it is saying. And terminates at either an open loop 0 or at infinity with k equal to infinity. So open loop 0 will come when k is infinite, or you will reach some infinite value when k is infinite. So you can see in this graph, we don't have any zeros, but as k will keep on increasing, you will move towards infinity. So as k tends to infinity, you also move towards infinity in this case. So that is basically the rule. And then I said, at k equal to 0, you are at some pole. You are at some poles, and those poles are basically the poles of the open loop transfer function, which I clearly showed you are 0 and minus a in that problem. When k is equal to infinity, you are at some zeros, and those zeros are the zeros of the open loop transfer function. But in this case, we are not having any zeros. So in this case, when k will tend to infinity, you will reach infinity, and you are reaching infinity along that a plus jb line. So that is basically what this rule is. Then rule 3 was, the number of branches terminating at infinity equals the number of open loop poles minus the number of open loop zeros. So as I said that either the branches will terminate at some open loop poles or the branches will terminate at infinity. So we are basically over here calculating how many branches are going to terminate at infinity. And this is a simple formula. The formula is that the number of branches is basically the number of poles. So if we can say number of branches, terminating at infinity is basically NP minus NZ. So in our problem, the number of poles of the open loop zeros and open loop poles. So number of open loop poles were 2, which were a minus a and 0, and number of zeros were 0. If you look at this GS, there are no zeros, but there are 2 poles. So NP becomes equal to 2, NZ is 0, so you get a value of 2, and you can see that there are 2 branches that terminate to infinity. One is this going up, and one is this going down. So there are 2 branches that end up at infinity, and that is basically what the rule is all about. Okay, so then we come to the next rule, and I will write it as rule number 4, and it says a point on the real axis lies on the root locus if the number of open loop poles plus zeros on the real axis to the right of this point is odd. I repeat again, a point on the real axis lies on the root locus. So we are basically trying to find out whether a certain point on the real axis will lie on the root locus or not. So to test that, we do the following thing. It is if the number of open loop poles plus zeros on the real axis to the right of this point are fundamentally odd. That is basically what we how we judge it. So let's look at some example to this, so that I think probably you will be able to figure out some of the things that we have done so far. Let's take an example to see all these points working in on a real example, so that you feel comfortable. It's just not English, and we are able to explain what it means. Okay, let's take a small example. Let's take that there is let's take an example where you have K S plus 1, S plus 2 over S plus 3, S plus 4, so this is the problem. Now let's apply all the rules that we have done so far and see where do we get. So my first question is, how many branches over here? First of all, tell me how many poles and zeros are there for the open loop transfer function. Can anybody tell me how many poles and zeros are there for the open loop transfer function?
So 3 poles, 2 zeros.
For the
3 poles and 2 zeros.
Yeah, for the open loop transfer function, we have 3 poles. They are located at s equal to 0, s equal to -3, and s equal to 4. And we have 2 zeros, which are located at s equal to -1 and s equal to -2. Okay. Now, how many branches are going to be there in this root locus? If I ask you that question, can you tell me? A branch always, okay, so see, what would be the corresponding values of capital K at these points? If you look at this rule, K will increase from 0 to infinity. Each branch of the root locus originates from an open loop pole with K equal to 0. You have 3 open loop poles. So all these points, s equal to 0, s equal to -3, s equal to -4 corresponds to K equal to 0. And branches will originate from these points. And since you have 3 poles, you will be rest assured that there will be 3 branches. So there are going to be 3 branches in this root locus. Is this clear? So one can say that the number of branches equals the number of open loop transfer function poles. I repeat again, look at this point and read it carefully. As K increases from 0 to infinity, each branch of the root locus originates from an open loop pole with K equal to 0. So if you look at this problem, you have 3 poles of the open loop transfer function. Open loop transfer function is this value here. This is GS. And you have s equal to 0, s equal to -3, s equal to -4 as the 3 poles. And since they are 3 in number, the number of branches in the root locus are going to be 3.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, if there were 4 open loop zeros, then what would be the number of branches in the root locus?
See, number of branches are going to be determined by the number of poles, not by the number of zeros. So the number of zeros are only going to determine where the branches will terminate and how many branches will terminate at how many zeros. So the number of branches have got nothing to do with the number of zeros. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Read this point again. Each branch of the root locus originates from an open loop pole with K equal to 0. So if each branch is originating and if you have n number of poles, then there will be n number of branches that will originate. That is basically what I'm trying to say.
Sir, but if a branch is terminating at some 0, then it should be counted as a branch as well.
No. It will be counted as a branch. I'm just saying, forget about the zeros and forget about the poles. I'm just saying, if I ask you how many branches will a root locus have, so what will be the deciding factor? The deciding factor would be that you will look for the number of poles of the open loop transfer function. Because the branches originate at open loop transfer function poles, not at open loop transfer function zeros. But if you ask me how many branches will terminate, where will the branches terminate? So you will say that they will terminate at open loop poles. So then you will look open loop zeros. Then you will look at zeros. But the question was how many branches are existing. So that depends on the number of poles, not on the number of zeros, according to this point. Okay. I hope I've answered your question. If there is nothing else, I can move ahead.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now if you look at this problem, then what can you say about how many branches will go to infinity?
So 1.
So
Was
0.
terminating at infinity.
Yeah. If you look at the same rule, it says that the branch of the root locus will originate from the open loop poles, and they will be marked by k equal to 0, and they will terminate either at open loop 0 or at infinity with k equal to infinity, right? And then the next point was that the number of branchings terminating at infinity equals the number of open loop poles minus number of open loop zeros. That means in our problem, the number of poles are basically 3 and the number of zeros are basically 2. So that means the number of branches that are terminating at infinity is 1. What will be the fate of the other two branches?
So they'll terminate at the zeros.
Yeah. So the other two branches are going to terminate at -1 and -1 and -2. Yeah. So the other two branches are going to terminate at -1 and -2. So that is basically how you determine the number of branches and how many branches will terminate at the poles or how many branches are going to go to infinity. Now, just a second. Let me just add few more slides. Okay. Now we want to find out what parts of the root locus, when we draw a graph, what parts of the root locus are going to lie on the real axis. That is important to find out. So we have the following points. If you look at this, there is one 0, there is one -3, there is one -4, there is one -2, and there is one -1. So let's just plot these points. So you have 0 here, and then so this is a pole. Then you have a -3 here. Then you have a -4 here. Then let's point this be -2. Sorry, -2 is a 0, right? Sorry. So let me just point it like this, and let this be -1, right? So now we are basically trying to find out whether there is any part of the root locus which will lie in this region, or in this region, or in this region, or in this region, or in this region. That is basically what we are trying to find out. So let's look at whether the root locus is going to lie in this region. So the first thing is we're trying to figure out whether the root locus lies in this region or not. So the idea is you pick up a point here. Let's say that we are trying whether this point, we are trying to find out whether this point lies on the root locus or not. So the idea is, look at this point here that I've written. A point on the real axis lies on the root locus if the number of open loop poles plus the number of open loop zeros on the real axis to the right of this point is odd. So now you count the number of open loop poles and number of open loop zeros on the real axis. So for this point, everything to its right is here, right? I repeat again. A point on the real axis lies on the root locus if the number of open loop poles plus zeros on the real axis to the right of this point is odd. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the sum of open loop poles and zeros right of this point is 5. That means this point lies on the root locus. And anything which will be to the left of -4, I think will lie on the root locus. So we just say that this point lies on the root locus. So root locus is definitely going to be here. We will have something of root locus here, some branch of root locus here. Then let's look at any point which lies in this range. Can I take a different pen and highlighter? There's only one in. Okay, so there's only just one highlighter, one color. Okay, so now we are looking at this region. So let's take a point here in this region. What do you think? Do you think anything here will lie on the root locus?
No, sir.
No. Why?
Sir, even odd.
Sir, some 4 है.
हाँ, अगर आप इसके if you look at this point and you find out the sum of all the zeros and poles that I have marked over here, to the right of this point you get a value 4, which is even, and it's not odd. That means this part does not lie in the root locus. So I'm not marking it. I'll mark with red the points that lie on the root locus. This line does not lie on the root locus. Then let's look at the third part segment. Let's look at this segment. Then for this segment, let's say that there is a point here, anywhere between -3 to -2. Then I will say safely that yes, this point lies. So there will be a root locus branch here. Which direction it will go, that will come later. But there will be a root locus branch. अच्छा, अब अगर मैं चलो, let's just go one by one. So there will be a root locus branch between -3 and -2. Okay. Then let's look at this. Let's look at this region here. And if I take a point here, will there be a root locus here?
No, sir.
There won't be any.
No.
Because the sum is 2. There is one 0 at -1, there is one pole at 0, and the sum is 2. So there is no part of the root locus is going to lie here. And then the last section happens to be this section. And if I take a point here, then will the root locus lie here?
Yes, sir.
It will lie here. Because any point along this region to its right will have one pole, and one is odd, right? There is no 0 this side. So that's one, and this region will also lie. Okay. So now you know that all these red regions, the red lines, indicate the portions of real axis which will lie on the root locus. Okay, now this point, let me just use another pen. This point corresponds to k equals, oh, this is bad. This point corresponds to k equal to 0. This point corresponds to k equal to 0. This point corresponds to k equal to 0. This point, this -2 point corresponds to k equal to infinity. This point corresponds to k equal to infinity. Now my question is, we know that the branches will start from zeros. Sorry, branches will start from poles and they will terminate at zeros. Can you tell me the direction of some of the branches of this root locus by knowing this fact that they will start from zeros? Sorry, they will start from poles, open loop, and they will terminate at zeros of the open loop transfer function. Can you tell me where the branches will be? Some of the branches? What will be the direction of the branches in this case?
So 2 of them will start from the poles and terminate at zeros, and one will go to infinity.
Yeah, so I can say one will start from -3 and it will terminate at 0. Oh, sorry, it will terminate at 0, which is located at -2. So one branch is this. Okay. Then there will be a branch that will start from 0 because it's an open loop transfer function pole, and it will end at open loop transfer function 0, which is -1. So one branch will go like this. So the two branches are already done that will terminate at zeros. then where is the third branch? The third branch has to go like this. And this will terminate at some minus infinity. So here you have the root locus plot, but not always it will be this simple. There will be some in which the imaginary axis will also play its part. Now let's say that in this problem, let's say in the same problem, I draw a graph that lies like this. This was your 0 point. This was your -3 point. This was your -4 point. This is -2. This is -1. Let's not talk about that transfer function right now. I'm just hypothetically drawing something over here. Let's say that there was a 0 here at some a plus jb. Let's say that there was a 0 here which was, sorry, minus a minus jb. Now if you were to find out the sections on the real axis where the root locus will lie, what you would do? Will the same sections be the sections that were there in the last graph? Would the sections still remain the same, or the sections will change?
It will remain the same.
Yes, they will remain the same. The reason is that if you look at this point very carefully, I said a point on the real axis lies on the root locus if the number of open loop poles plus zeros on the real axis to the right of this point is odd. So we are not going to even consider these zeros. But then only two branches are, going, two branches are going to zeros. Then you will say, what will happen to these zeros? So obviously there has to be some more number of poles that will, move towards this branch. But the point that I want you to understand here is that while calculating the region on the real axis where the root locus is going to lie, you will only be considering poles and zeros of the open loop transfer function that lie on the real axis and not imaginary poles and zeros of the open loop transfer function. That is basically the point that I want to drive you to in this particular example. Okay, let's move to the next rule. So I hope that all these 4 rules that we have done are clear based on the example that we did. Of course, we'll do many more examples, but let me just finish some of the other rules that are there. So the rule is now let us say that n are the number of poles of open loop transfer function and m are the number of zeros of open loop transfer function. Then we know that n minus m branches will move towards infinity. Right? These are the branches that will move towards infinity. So now, a very interesting thing is there. It says, the rule is this. The rule says, n minus 1 branches of the root locus which tend to infinity do so along straight line asymptotes whose angles are given by pi 2q plus 1 pi over n minus n. So this is a formula, and here q varies from 0 to 1 to 3 and so on. If you write pi, this angle is going to be in radians, or if you write phi as 2q plus 1 180 degree over n minus m, then you can just say that this angle is going to be in degrees. So this is another rule that you people must remember. Okay, we'll see all these things when we are basically, doing the work. But I think this is another rule that you people must remember. Then comes rule number 6. So sometimes the root locus is going to begin on the real axis, and then it will break from real axis and move towards the imaginary plane, which is somewhere in the middle. So that is that is something that one must try to also locate. So breakaway points, let me just first tell you what are breakaway points. First concept is that of a breakaway point. These are the points where there is a double root, number one. There is a double root, and they represent points from where the root locus shoots off to the general S-plane. Like for example, suppose you had a problem in which there was one pole here at minus. You had one pole here at minus 2, and you had let's say a pole here, and there was something here, and let's say that there was this represented some breakaway point. So what will happen is, let's say that the root locus starts moving this side, then this part starts to move this side. We'll see some of the times it will move, and then obviously they cannot combine and terminate at this point because they are basically all poles. So what happens is the root locus will break like this and it will shoot off something like this. So this point is going to be called as a breakaway point. Because ultimately I'm telling you that this control system has 3 poles, but there are no zeros. So fundamentally all branches must terminate to infinity. So this branch will obviously terminate to minus infinity, which will be on this side. But these branches have to also terminate on in infinity. But what will they? But they are like, but this region has to move somewhere towards infinity. Obviously, it cannot move towards infinity on this line because this line is finite from 0 to -1. And this section of the graph lies on the root locus because there is only one pole to the left hand side of this region, any point you take here. There is no graph on this point. In this region, there is no graph because the number of zeros and poles to the right become 2. So there is no point here. There is a region on this side. There is a region between these 2 points. So this one can terminate to -infinity very peacefully. So no problems there. But then the question is, what will happen to the branch that will start from -1 or that will start from 0? Where will that go? So obviously they will move along this side towards each other, but they cannot terminate into one another. So there will be a point here which will just, shoot it off. So this graph will actually go like this. Okay. And then we would also try to evaluate. Then the thing is this, all the branches that are terming to infinity, they do so along some straight line asymptotes whose angles are given by this. So then now if they are tending to infinity, we will try to find out what are those asymptotes that they will approach.
Sir, can you please explain once more that why do they shoot off into the S-plane?
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Okay. Let me just add some more slides. Suppose, I'll repeat the entire problem again. Suppose, and make it a little bigger also. So I'm just saying that you have -2 here, and you have -1 here, and you have 0 here. Okay. Now, we know that there will be a section of root locus that will lie between -1 and 0. Because any point along this region will have only 1 0 to the right hand side, and that is the rule to check whether the graph will exist on the real axis or not. There will not be any part of the root locus between -2 and -1 because in this, the number of zeros and poles to the right hand side of that point will be 2, which is even, so that will not exist. There will be a graph to the left of -2 because the number of zeros and number of poles, if you add, they turn out to be 3. So we know, and there are no zeros given over here. So that means fundamentally all the branches are going to terminate to infinity. So one branch will originate from -2, one branch will originate from -1, the other branch will originate from 0. So a branch that originates from -2 will definitely go on this side only because it cannot go to the side to its right because there is no region of root locus that lies between -2 and -1. So this is the only direction where it will go, and it will just keep on going this side, so it will approach -infinity like this. So that is sorted out. Now let's look at this -1. Now for this -1, the branch will always originate to its right because it cannot originate to the left because there is no region over here for the root locus to exist. So this branch is originating like this. If we look at this pole 0, then obviously this side is not considered. The right hand side is not there because you cannot. You have no zeros or poles this side. So whether any point here lies on the root locus or not is out of the question because it's basically 0. The number of poles, the number of zeros, and it's not an odd number. It's not an even number. So fundamentally, there is nothing here. So that means this line also has to move in this direction. So now you have 3 branches as predicted by the number of poles. One branch is moving towards -infinity. So this is taken care of. The other 2 branches must also terminate at some infinity. But how will it terminate? It cannot terminate anywhere here along this line because this line is finite. And it also cannot terminate into each other because these are branches that are originating from poles, and they have to terminate either at zeros of the open loop transfer function or at infinity. So there will be some point in the middle. There will be some point here where this graph is going to shoot off towards infinity. This curve, let's say, not call it graph, let's just say there will be a shootout of this curve somewhere in the wild S plane, and it will keep on going. It will keep on going. so that it reaches infinity. There is no other way it can reach infinity. I mean, I'm not saying that it cannot go along the straight line. It can go along the straight line, but then at infinity, these curves are going to asymptotically approach two straight lines, because there is one section that goes up, there is another section that goes down. So there'll be two straight lines. So let me just draw those two straight lines. So let's say that there are two straight lines. And these curves are going to asymptotically approach these straight lines. Asymptotically approaching means that they will touch these lines at infinite, right? Infinity. So basically, if you remember, I had given you these angles. So these angles are basically the angles of these lines. So you will come to know where these lines are located, and then you will trace your curve in such a way that you are able to figure out where these lines would be. Let's just try to look at these lines for this problem. Okay, so if you see the formula, then that is 2q plus 1 pi n minus m, right? So let's just write that phi here. That is 2q plus 1 pi over n minus m. Or let's just write it 180 degrees, because it'll be easier to understand it in degree terms right now. Okay. So in this case, the value for q, we will start from 0, will go to 1, 2, and it will end at n minus m minus 1, right? Because it's starting from 0. So it will take as many values as n minus m are, right? So that's why it will start from 0 and it will end at n minus m minus 1. So in this case, n minus m is 3, because you have number of poles as 3, number of zeros as 0, so you have 3. So your q will vary from 0, 1, and 2. These are the values of q. So let's put these values. So pi becomes equal to, let's put q as 0. So you get 180 divided by 3, which is 60 degrees. So you will have one line at 60 degree. This is one asymptote. That will go like this. Then this is phi 1. Then let's evaluate phi 2 at q equal to 1. So that will be 3 into 180 degree over 3, which is 180 degree only. And this happens to be this line. And you can see that one part of, I'm sorry, I should have denoted it in this color only. Just a second. So then one asymptote goes like this. And we know that there is a part of the graph which is here, which is already approaching this line. Okay. So there is one asymptote that is at 60 degree. There is one asymptote that is at 180 degree. And if you evaluate the third asymptote, then you put q equal to 2. That is 5 into 180 divided by 3. So that is 60, which is 300 degree. So this angle, so you can just say that this angle is minus 60. Or you could say that there is one asymptote that goes like this, and then there is another asymptote that goes like this. So then you come to this line. So now you can see what will happen is that these two branches are going to start. There will be a breakaway point here, and then the curve will shoot up and it will go like this. So basically your root locus will look like this for this kind of a transfer function. So this would be basically some k over s into s plus 1 into s plus 2. If you're going to draw the root locus of it, it will look like this. So that is what I mean by asymptotes that I have evaluated using rule number 5. Rule number 5, I have evaluated these asymptotes, angles of these asymptotes, straight lines, and then rule number 6, which tells you the breakaway point. Now, I am continuing with the rule number 6 and writing what I had to write a statement there, but we just started discussing this. So let me just write rule number 6 now. Rule number 6 says that breakaway points of the root locus are the solutions of dk over ds equals 0. So you are going to create an equation and then you will differentiate it with respect to s and you will equate it to 0, and then whatever values of s you obtain, those values of s will represent these breaking points. Okay, so that is what breakaway points will be, and we'll see them later on. So like I'll just give you I'll give you an example of this, but let's just finish all the points so that we can just straight away dive into some problems. Okay. Now another thing I want to talk about breakaway points is that breakaway points can be real and complex. That means it's not necessary that the breakaway point lies on the real axis. I mean, nobody's saying that. They can lie anywhere, So you have to know this, that breakaway points can lie anywhere. Okay. Now there is one thing very interesting happening here in this root locus, is that there is a point on this curve and there is a point on this curve where the root locus is intersecting the imaginary axis. It is this point and it is this point. And we know that when the roots are at the imaginary axis, that is the point at which the system is just about stable or it is just about to become unstable. So these are those critical points that will determine at what is the value of k at which the roots arrive at this point. So we know that अगर हमने k की value उससे ज़्यादा बढ़ाई तो हमारे जो roots हैं वो right hand side की तरफ चले जाएंगे, and then the system will be stable. So these points are very important. If in any graph, if you draw any curve, any root locus, and you see that any part of the curve, if it is intersecting with the imaginary axis, that point is very important, because that the value of s at that point will in a way determine the value of k at that point, and then you will know that you cannot increase k beyond this point, because if you do so, you will go towards the domain of unstable behavior. So you can clearly see that if you end up in this region, or if you end up on this portion of the graph, you have entered the unstable region, because any point on this section of the graph is going to lie on the right hand side of the s-plane. And now if the roots of the characteristic equation happen to be on the right hand side of the s-plane, your system is unstable. So that's why these points, this point and this point, they become very, very important points, because they will tell you the critical values of k. These points will determine the critical value of k's, and they will actually give you a limit to the stability of the system. So therefore I write another rule. And that rule will be, what rule? That will be 7. And the rule is intersection of root locus branches with the imaginary axis can be determined by use of Routh-Hurwitz criteria. Interesting point, because a criteria that was used to determine absolute stability and instability is now being used in a method which is used to determine relative stability. And it is very obvious, because beyond this point, you can very well say that your system is unstable. At this point and lesser to this point, you can say the system is stable. So what was the tool that you had in your hands to determine whether the system is stable or unstable? That was Routh-Hurwitz criteria. So we will apply Routh-Hurwitz criteria over here to figure out whether the system is stable or unstable. Okay, so this is another rule. We will take up some examples, of course, and I will apply this all these rules, and I think with this all these rules we will be able to create root locus plots for transfer functions. So I will just put up this slide again. Towards the later half of the day, I'm going to put up a video for control systems in which I will discuss 5 or 6 examples of root locus construction. Okay, they are going to be good examples that will cover most of the type of problems that are asked in root locus. Just go through that video. It will be, or maybe what I'll do is that I will put up 3-4 videos of one problem each, so that the video length doesn't exceed more than 10 minutes, because I don't want to put up a video of 50 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll put up 3-4 videos today only for sure about these root locus techniques. Please watch them, and I will put up these slides so that you have the rules side by side and you can create those graphs yourself, so that we don't have to practice so many problems when we meet the next time, and we can just go to the next topic. So root locus ends over here. These are the rules. I will give you some solved examples. You have to practice them. I can also give you some examples that you can practice and you can submit it. But fundamentally, root locus is over, and the examples are soon going to follow. Okay. So if there is no question, I think we can just end the class now.
सर
Yeah.
सर ये बुक में किस चैप्टर से है?
मैं चैप्टर मार्क करके बता दूंगा बुक में आपको, अभी क्लासरूम में डाल दूंगा, आप वो सेक्शन पढ़ लीजिएगा.
ओके सर.
ठीक है. ओके. Alright then, good day.
Sir,
हाँ जी.
sir, is the root locus the last topic, or is there any following?
No, we'll do
topic?
one more. We'll do one more topic, which is Bode plot.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, we'll do one more topic. I think we will be able to cover that topic. And as it is now, I have like kind of developed some skill of putting videos. Whatever is the quality, I'm not sure. But DSP students, how many of them saw the DSP videos? I'm sure that some of you saw the DSP videos.
Yes, they were all right.
They seem to be okay, right? In terms of quality of
Yes,
video, audio, right?
यस सर.
Yeah. So if
Yes,
they're
sir.
okay, I think then I think probably these examples I'll just put them today only. Just go through them, and if you have problems, we'll discuss it in the next class. In another 15-20 minutes, we'll discuss that, and then start. And quickly we'll go to Bode plot, and we'll finish Bode plot in maybe a class or so. Yesterday there was an emergency. I could not take the class because in university we had that admission process is going very slow, and we are a little concerned when the classes will start. And there were some elections in which faculty members were to be a part of. So that's why we had to go, and that's why I had canceled the class there. But please, Mansa, if you can find out time, then maybe we can accommodate that class sometime. Maybe in the weekday only, or maybe at the weekend. So if you just find out some time, we can take that class. It will be nice. Okay. All right.
Okay.
And I will. I think by Sunday I will put up or maybe today only I will put up the syllabus for control systems. We have covered most of the things. I just want to cover one more thing, which is Bode plot, and which I think if we have a Saturday class, I think that will also be taken care of. So in the last week, we can just do some simple revision for control systems, and the entire syllabus is over. The only topics that we have left in control systems are as follows. One is PI and PID controllers. Those topics, once you master all these things, those topics can be done by yourself. I can post some videos of it. But whatever control system is asked in any competitive examination, whatever control system you would require to know, to be able to sit in an interview and answer questions on control systems, all that is over. So you don't need to worry. Almost 98% of the syllabus of control systems is over. One topic which is left is the that design of PI and PID, which is proportional controller, proportional integrating controller, and proportional integrating differentiating controller. So those three things are left, but I can easily put up videos for all the three. You can look into it, but I will not ask them in the exam because you have not done it. So fundamentally, the next class is going to tell you the syllabus in control systems, which is going to be up to Bode plot. So we have 4 units. We have the first unit, we have the second unit in which design of physical systems was there. The third unit was time domain analysis, and the fourth unit was the frequency domain analysis. So I'll just give you topic by topic breakup of the syllabus which is going to be asked in control systems by evening, along with the links for the videos. Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Take care.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.